We had a great call the other day in the office. Hi, this is BMW. Do you guys want to drive the M3 Touring? Obviously we said we were busy and we moved on. But then they begged us, so we graciously accepted the offer. So, in honour of our upcoming drive of the car everyone is talking about, we thought it high time to go through the greatest hits of BMW's mighty M division. When the M3 got to its E90 generation, it had grown a big V8 engine and a dual clutch gearbox. But it had also gained a significant amount of mass. That V8 was very highly strung and lacked the low down torque that some of its predecessors had had in spades, but thankfully there were plenty of special editions to follow that tried to correct those issues. Our favourite is one of the lesser known, the M3 CRT, an initialism that you really won't hear very often. The M3 CRT came only in 4-door mode, and just 67 were made. It was blessed with the 4.4 litre V8 from the M3 GTS, and now packed 440 horsepower while managing to be 68 kilograms lighter than its slightly lardy sibling. But this was no stripped out track special. The CRT was almost like BMW's 911 GTS. More power, better dynamics, but still loaded with kit. This was the E90 in its absolute sweet spot. Oh yeah, just jumping in to say, if you do enjoy this video, don't forget to hit that like button, and then if you want to see more from Goodwood and Goodwood Road and Racing, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon so you see everything that we do, and then let's move on to something a little bit more modern. And let's move on to the saloon version of the current M3, a controversial inclusion that's only increased by our choice of the all-wheel drive one. Yes, it has the snout of something that's destined to become bacon, and the lines don't quite match the M4, but the thing is, if you've driven one, you're more than happy to forget any of that, because the current M3 is spellbindingly good. And while the rear-driven car is the most fun, the Xdrive loses barely any of that enjoyment. The engine is a mighty, meaty 6-cylinder, as you should expect, with turbocharging sending it into 911 levels of performance. With a chassis to match all that ability, both versions of the M3 are a joy to drive, but the Xdrive provides just a little extra capability in all conditions. The current M3 couldn't be more different to the original one, but it's easily on its way to being a bit of an all-time great. Yep, the M1 had to be included in this list, but it really is the starting point for BMW's M division. Beautiful looks by Giugiaro, an original plan for it to be built by Lamborghini, it has everything that you want from a supercar of the wedged era, and in an era when you bought a supercar fully in the knowledge that it was going to fail you from time to time, the added security of a BMW badge. With a 3.5 litre straight 6 mounted amidships, the M1 screamed its 277 horsepower around like a beautiful chorus and began to show that supercars don't have to try and kill you when you're just driving them around town. It's been superseded by many of the cars that followed, but the M1 is still the best looking car the M division has created, and in pro car form is near race car perfection. After the M1, and the 3-litre CSL before that, the first proper M car was the original M5. Based on the E28 5 Series, this was the first time that BMW had taken an ordinary family car and made it into a speed machine. Powered by a 3.5 litre straight 6, the original M5's 286 horsepower doesn't really seem like a lot today, but this M5 was a featherweight compared to now's giant saloons. To be honest, it's pretty small compared to a 2 Series, and that engine was actually a more powerful version of the one in the M1. So, when the M5 arrived on the scene, it was an absolute rocket ship. And, in order to showcase that change, BMW made alterations to pretty much nothing. Other than a tiny spoiler boot lip, a couple of M5 badges and some spanking BBS rims, the M5 looked like any other 5 Series. It could be the ultimate sleeper. Yes, okay, the E60 and 61 are, well, they're fundamentally flawed cars, and the styling has had to grow on many people a lot over the years, but there was an estate version, complete with a 5 litre V10 engine, so we'll probably forgive almost every sin. Those sins, by the way, include a sluggish gearbox, heavy and thirsty engine, tiny fuel tank, and an impressive ability to self-combust, so tread very carefully if you do want to buy one. But it still had some M Division dynamic magic. And there is that estate version, so it cannot fail to be cooler than any other car on this list. The saloon could do 200 miles an hour, but we'll never actually need an M car to do that, so the one that can fit all our furniture in at 180 miles an hour with a screaming V10 up front is the car for us. The F90 M5 is the daddy of speed machines from Bavaria, and at the very top of that tree sits the M5 CS. This isn't just some absolute speed merchant devoid of any character either. The CS has managed to make the biggest proper M car also possibly the best driver's car in the current range. Take an M5 competition, already pretty good. Drop a not insignificant 70 kilograms through smatterings of extra carbon, new wheels, exhaust and less soundproofing. Then lower the suspension, retune the dampers and anti-roll bars, and finally give the engine a polish so that it now produces 635 horsepower, and bang, you have the fastest M car there has ever been. On the road, it somehow makes the current M5 even better than it was, and what you really have to love is that even though it has some very noticeable styling tweaks, it is much more subtle, perhaps a nod to the original M5's laid-back looks. The M2 was an absolute stormer when it first appeared in the world, but like many cars from BMW M, it took a few special editions to really tease out the very best elements of it. The M2 had been preceded by the 1M, and more on that later, but this was very much on the more modest end of the scale than its skunk works predecessor. The M2 CS dialed everything right back up into 1M territory. Consider this as the M2 taken to its logical extremes. The full-bore M4 engine has been crowbarred into the bonnet, giving 444 horsepower. There's trick suspension and carbon ceramic brakes. It's basically the same team that made the 1M let loose on its successor. And what they created will probably go down as one of the last great petrol BMW sports cars. Deciding the order of the last few cars was pretty difficult. In some cases it's just personal preference, and that's what puts the original M3 down in fourth, and yes, feel free, go on, be angry. The original M3 really only came to existence for one reason: create a platform from which to beat Mercedes in the DTM during the homologation era. The fact that BMW could then market a faster, genre-changing car off the back and pretty much kickstart the future of the M division, well, that was just a happy addition. Later straight sixes are slightly sweeter, but the rasping 4-cylinder S14 still has our hearts, and some resto modders have now found ways to make it sound even more incredible. The E30 M3 will remain on any list of the best M cars for all time. The obvious choice, if we were to insist on putting an E46 on this list, would be the CSL, right? But that was lumbered with an upsetting gearbox, and if you speak to people who've gone over the edge in one, you'll hear tales of a snap that came from almost nowhere. So, for us, it's the CS, the car which had the same improved brakes and steering as the CSL, but also a proper manual, and that gets it onto this list. The E46 is my favourite looking era of 3 Series, and the M3 wore its extra meat well, in a way that bridges both subtle and aggressive. The only thing that could push the E46 M3 CS up our list would be a better use of the potential for intake sound, but that could be fixed by an intrepid owner. Before we move on to the top 2, we'd just like to jump in and say thank you very much for watching this video. We really do appreciate it, and if you are enjoying it, don't forget to hit that like button, and then we'll move on to our 2 favourite M cars. Almost the opposite of that delicate bridge between subtle and aggressive is the XS All Areas 1 M Coupe, a skunk works project of engineers really having a day off and seeing what mental things they could create that somehow made off the drawing board and into showrooms. The recipe is as simple as it is ballistic. Take the coupe version of the smallest BMW and give it a big straight 6 engine producing 340 horsepower, a manual gearbox, and then just drive the rear wheels. Then, shove as many suspension bits from the M3 on it as you can fit and make sure that it has hips that Akira would be proud of, and boom, it's the 1 Series M Coupe, or, to give it the name that everyone uses, the 1M. When BMW talks of the ultimate driving machine, this is pretty much what it means. A machine so scintillating to drive that it becomes addictive. So aggressive was the 1M that the M2, for which the 1M served as proof of concept with its big engine and aggressive bodywork, it looks a bit tame in comparison. 25 years later, there are still few cars that have made the same impression as the E39 M5 did when it arrived in 1998. M cars of today may seem like they are overly blessed with power over their standard counterparts, but 400 horsepower back in the late 1990s was supercar levels plus. Outside, it was able to look subtle enough that many uninitiated wouldn't know it from another 5 Series, and yet sinister enough that if you knew cars, you could never mistake it for anything lower down the range. Able to do 180 miles an hour, handle at levels no other family car could muster, and pass through town without a fuss. For us, no car has managed to straddle the Goldilocks zone of usable, yet barnstorming fast execs as well as the E39 did. Maybe the M3 Touring is about to change our minds. So, what do you think of our list of our favourite BMW M cars? What have we missed out? What should have been on there? Where would you put everything? Let us know in the comments below.